Hello and welcome once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires that we call the internets is Joe, Crazy Writer. How you doing today, Joe?
Cory, did I ever tell you about the time I had to make a split-second decision as to which part of my anatomy to put in the toilet bowl, my face or my ass?
Why no, Joe. It sounds like back in college you were a heavy drinker. Is that what this is all about?
No, actually, it's what happened to me last Friday while I was at work.
Oh, you were drinking at work?
I wasn't actually planning to get that sick until a buddy of mine's wedding in the next couple weeks. But no, I don't know what the hell hit me. It was just a bit of food poisoning because boy, it wasn't that he's gonna puke. It's just it's like I'm a sponge and it's just coming out of both ends. And believe me, if you ever have that choice, your face instinctively goes to a place not built for your face. My dad, polite, most helpfully said, that's why I keep a waste can next to the toilet, just in case.
Yeah.
But at the airport, it wasn't helpful. So I made it all the way in, promptly got rid of most of my bodily fluids, and then crawled up to my work area and said, I'm going home. But as soon as I settled down, so that was my Friday. How was yours?
My Friday was nice. I got home at a decent time. I watched the movie Failsafe. Have you ever seen the movie Failsafe?
I have not.
It is from, 1962. Henry Fonda plays the president. And what it is, there is a malfunction during a routine nuclear test. And because of that, a squadron of planes carrying nuclear bombs are headed toward Moscow. They have gone past the failsafe point, hence the title. And very, very well done. Loved that movie. I had not seen it before, which kind of surprised me because I'm really into those political thrillers. And very well done. I liked it a lot. It was on Turner Classic Movies. So that's why I love my Turner Classic Movies. I can record all this stuff that I should have seen by now. And this was my weekend to work, so I spent a lot of time at the group home. And spent a lot of time editing the last episode because I was getting over my cold. I'm still kind of getting over it, so hopefully I'm not going to have as many coughing fits. I cut out 15 minutes of coughing fits, by the way, in the episode we did last week.
Which is why it was only 20 minutes long?
Well, it was only an hour and 45 minutes long. We also talked about my friend Tommy's new podcast.
Ooh.
He has a podcast called A Minute of Frankenstein, where he and a friend are going to go through the original Frankenstein movie minute by minute, which means they will do 77 episodes.
How do you do? We're about to unfold the story of Frankenstein.
This is Tom Lang.
And this is Bill Evenson.
And we're the hosts of a new podcast called Frankenstein Minute.
That's right, we've taken the classic Universal Studios Frankenstein films and broken them down minute by minute.
And each episode, we're going to dissect 1 minute of Frankenstein.
We'll talk about Colin Clive, who played Henry Frankenstein,
Dwight Fry, his hunchbacked assistant,
May Clark, Henry's fiancée,
and of course, don't forget that monster played by the enigmatic question mark.
We'll also talk about the director James Whale and the fascinating flourishes he brought to the picture.
And Mrs. Percy B. Shelley, Mary, of course, the author of the original novel on which the film was based, and the difference between the novel and the film.
This really is a classic film, the one that many point to as the one that started it all.
Dracula?
Sure.
But, seriously, 1 minute a week? How long is Frankenstein?
Frankenstein is 71 minutes.
Are you sure we can keep this going for 71 weeks?
Oh, sure, no problem. I mean, this is Frankenstein we're talking about, not Dracula.
Good point.
We'll discuss characters' motivations and talk about the great performances and John Bowles.
Don't forget Kenneth Strickfaden and his amazing electrical devices.
We'll even reveal which of the lead actors grew up in sleepy little Chaska, Minnesota.
Frankenstein Minute premieres on August 31st, 2018.
Where?
You know, the usual places: iTunes, Google Play, YouTube.
And check us out on FrankensteinMinute.com and Facebook and Twitter, if that's still a thing.
Is Twitter still alive?
Oh, it's alive.
It's alive!
It's alive!
And I guess they have the first 20 already recorded. And all I can think is, they're doing stuff in advance?
I know. But see, that's where we want to be on the cutting edge, because that was something we talked about at the very beginning. It's like, you know, we're gonna do timeless shows that could be recorded and done whenever. But now it's like we want to get up to the date and be able to talk about breaking news. For example, like Guardians of the Galaxy #3 apparently is now off Disney's film schedule. To which I posted, just eat the fucking crow and rehire the guy.
Oh, if Warner Brothers is smart, they've already hired him.
Oh.
I have not heard that they have, but if Warner Brothers has any brains at all, hire James Gunn. You know somebody's going to hire him. Because the guy's got $2 billion movies under his belt.
Yeah. I mean, that's just... And the whole circumstances behind it. It was just, a hatchet job for things that were said years ago. I mean, what kind of things would we find under your badge of shame, Strode, from years ago that could potentially sink any career you might have in the podcasting business?
Let's see. When I was 34, I dated a 20-year-old.
Now you're just bragging.
I did someone's cleaning for them when they asked me to.
That's too soon. No doubt about it. We're a couple boring guys.
I am unbelievably boring. I tell people that all the time. I'm one of the most boring people you'll ever meet. The most exciting thing that happened over the last 7 days, Joe, is a really cute girl who dresses well started working at my job. And I told her, you have a great sense of style. And she said, I really like your vest. Why do you wear vests all the time? And I said, I wanted to be Han Solo when I grew up. There you go. That's the most exciting thing that happened in the last week.
You can't run around with guns on your hip, at least not until recently, so you couldn't do that.
Well, I could, but, I'd have to get a license.
Yeah.
It's easier just to go on Amazon and order a vest.
True.
But the story I read was that they are going to rush Doctor Strange 2 to take the place of Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And I don't think that they have to worry too much about, putting out another movie, seeing as how the Fox deal has gone through, and now they have the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. I got a feeling that Disney's not going to be worried about having product.
Yeah, it's just sad to see him, kill a franchise just for stupid reasons.
The other thing about Disney that I read this week is the chairman of the board has discussed what the streaming service will be, and one of the things he says is that they will not have as much as Netflix, so they are looking at probably a $5 or $6 price point.
That's really weird because they actually probably own more than Netflix.
No, they don't. If you look at Netflix, the number of TV series that Netflix owns, just that they've done, is getting huge.
I don't know if I buy that because Disney's been producing crap for well over 50 years. I mean, yeah, some of it may be antiquated and tug at the nostalgia strings, but seriously, they could really pull out a decent streaming service. I mean, good Lord, the WWE can do it. Disney can do it. It's just a question of what are they going to do? Do they want to mine their old stuff, or are they looking for new content? Do they want to, exploit the movies once all the other revenue streams are exhausted, then put up all the Marvel movies or all the Star Wars movies or things like that?
And what did they have the rights to? There's stuff for Hulu. There's stuff for Netflix. Netflix has kind of said that the Marvel series that were done for Netflix, those will never leave their service. And I believe them because that's probably part of the contract. If you do a TV series for Netflix, Netflix will own it, at least part of it. So they're saying that the Marvel series that show up on Netflix, they're not going to be going over there. They said they named 3 of the big series, Once Upon a Time, and a couple others, and they said those aren't available on their service until at least 2024. They finally gave the date of the Star Wars movies. They don't have the rights to show those until 2024.
Yeah, well, they have plenty of stuff they can do in the meantime.
Well, how many times are you going to watch Sword in the Stone, Joe?
I haven't watched it once. That's why I'd be excited to see it happen.
Oh, there you go.
Could you imagine they could have like a Saturday night movie type thing where they pull one thing out of their library and run it? Of course, the question is, do they want to do it that way, or do they want to keep doing the every so often a new DVD is released and then buy it now before it goes back in the vault? Or is that passe? I mean, their DVD sales fallen so much that that's not even a sales campaign anymore.
Well, with kids' movies, they sell those. Because, Joe, you had 2 kids. They will watch the same thing over and over and over and over, won't they?
Oh, yeah.
With my son, it was the first Batman movie. What were the movies that your daughters made you endure endlessly?
Anything Barney for Hot Dana and Lion King. And Howie was Nightmare Before Christmas and Godzilla Final War.
Oh!
She actually watched UHF a few times, too, and broke the disc, unfortunately. But forgive.
You forgive. Not me, man. I'd still be holding a grudge. I went over a whole bunch of news that happened. So, do we want to do happy news first or sad news?
Let's do sad news, and we'll end with happy.
All right. Sad news, everyone. Sad news.
Aww.
Russ Heath passed away.
Yeah.
If you're mostly a Marvel fan, you won't know much about Russ Heath. But Russ Heath worked in comics from the 40s until, I think, his last story was 4 or 5 years ago at Marvel. He did a couple sequences in the Immortal Iron Fist. He is mostly known for his war comics, especially at DC, where he worked on Sergeant Rock, Viking Prince, all of that sort of stuff. He did Sea Devils, which if you go out, you can actually find the showcase that reprints the entire run of Sea Devils. I actually knew him mostly from his work at Warren and his work with Harvey Kurtzman. He worked on EC, but he's probably best known outside of comics for a singular character that he did through the 60s and 70s that actually got him a place to live for a few years. Does Joe know what character am I talking about?
Oh, those are the ads for the little army men and the revolutionary guys.
No, he said he only got $100 for each of those.
Oh, okay. I guess I don't know.
Little Annie Fanny. He worked with Kurtzman and Elder on Little Annie Fanny. And at one point, they were running behind. I know, that's shocking, isn't it, Joe? That Harvey Kurtzman would be running late on something. And they actually had to go to the Playboy Mansion to finish it up. And then, they set up shop there, so they draw and sleep and then wake up and draw and sleep. And, when they got that strip done, Kurtzman and Elder went home, and Russ Heath just kind of stayed. And he stayed there for, stories vary, anywhere from a few months to a couple of years, because when he got in, he said, well, I'll just stay till they kick me out. And he'd been there so long that everybody thought that he just belonged there. So think about that. He's a cartoonist who got to live at the Playboy Mansion free of charge for a while. Was very popular with the people there, especially with Hef, because Hef was a frustrated cartoonist. That's one of the reasons why Playboy always had the cartoons. Hef loved cartooning. He actually, when he got out of college and was full-grown adult, he wanted to be a cartoonist, but his cartoons just didn't sell well enough. But when he started Playboy, he made sure that he had cartoons, loved cartoonists. That's actually why he gave Kurtzman Little Annie Fanny, because he hired Kurtzman away from EC to do a magazine called Trump that lasted 2 whole issues. By the way, it's available through Dark Horse, and I highly, highly recommend that book. And he felt bad that he hired Kurtzman away for something that failed, so he gave him a job doing a comic strip in Mad, and that was Little Annie Fanny, which lasted till Kurtzman's passing. There were a couple cartoonists who tried it after Kurtzman passed, but it failed pretty miserably. But Russ Heath lived to be 91. He, I guess the last 5 or 6 years, the Hero Initiative was working to help him find people to hang out with. And cartoonists loved hanging out with him, taking him out to lunch and stuff. But they were finding people to have lunch with him and spend time with him because he was 91, so most of his friends had passed away. So, sad news, we are losing our golden and silver age folks still. Hard to believe that Stan Lee, 95, still around. He must have really taken care of himself.
Excelsior. Maybe there's something to that pulpwood product.
Well, one of the things that people who know him say, he never took an elevator. Always took the stairs. So he kept up in good shape, I guess. Any other news that you've heard, Joe?
Not really. That's the thing. I work over the weekend, so unless something pops up on the interwebs, it's pretty quiet.
Well, I started writing down all the news I'd heard, and there's all kinds of news. There's convention news.
Oh, you mean like the MCBA Fall Comic Con 2018 on October 6th, 2018 at the Edumacation Building. And if you go to mcbacomiccons.com, you get all the information. I know the guest list is shaping up. The dealer letters are out.
Any big-name guests signed up so far?
I don't know. I don't want to go to the website. It kind of spoil it for me. Usually on the one-day ones, it's hard to do because there's a lot of guys already going to big 2-day ones. Almost every weekend has a major Comic-Con somewhere.
Well, I know there's one weekend coming up that won't have a major Comic-Con somewhere. Now, Joe, you know about the Fan Fusion that they had here in Minneapolis, right?
Yeah.
Started as a Phoenix convention. They're expanding. They came to Minneapolis. I heard that one was successful. But the one in Vegas Fan Fusion, has been canceled. They have not given a reason why, but they canceled far enough out that it's probably just not enough dealer sales.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I mean, Vegas is pretty expensive and really, really big place to go.
Hotel rooms are dirt cheap, though. Hotel rooms and flights are still dirt cheap because I still see every so often, because I went to a hotel once, I get tons of email about, travel. And it's, hey, we'll fly you out to Vegas and give you a hotel room for the weekend for $300. Because they want you to waste $900 in the slot machines. I won't waste $900 in slot machines.
No, I just did $20 and came out with $260, and then I called it quits.
That's probably a smart thing to do.
I have a friend when we went out to Vegas, and she's like, anytime you double your money in any type of machine, cash out and go to the next machine, because that's the best you can do.
Yep.
Normally, your goal is just, I'm going to put in $40, I'm going to play it till it's gone.
Yeah.
But if you happen to pull out $80, quit, go to the next machine.
What my son used to do, he wouldn't go to Vegas, of course, but he would get paid every other Friday, and I'm vegetarian, and he was not. So when he lived here in his early 20s, he would get paid, he would go to the butcher shop here in town, he would buy meat for the next 2 weeks.
Good to have meat.
And then he would take $50 and go out to Mystic Lake, the local Native American casino, and he would play whatever whatever slot machine had the most game-like things, where you choose things and it's more like a video game than a slot machine. And he would just sit down there and play that and drink the free soda all night. And then he would do the breakfast buffet and come home and crash. Sometimes he would come home with double his money. Sometimes he'd come home with nothing. There were a few times he came home with enough money that he said, "You need to take me to the bank before I go to sleep." Why? Because if I don't put this in my account, I'm going to spend it all. So, me, I never got into it like that. I think I've been out to Mystic Lake once, and I played blackjack. And it's funny have you been to Mystic Lake, Joe?
In and out once.
They do not serve alcohol there. But everyone at my blackjack table was roaring drunk.
So that basically you got to go get your own drinks.
Yeah, I think they were drinking in the car, or they had a flask and they'd put it in their soda. And I made a little bit of money. Not much. But boy, it wasn't worth it putting up with the drunks. And Fan Fusion is not the only convention having trouble, Joe.
Who else is?
Wizard World.
Well, that's nothing new.
Well, they posted a loss for their second quarter.
I'm shocked. Shocked, I tell you.
Take a guess. How much?
Well, that's not fair. I read your email.
$500,000.
$505,273. No, $2.
$500,000. They lost $500,000. I don't think we're going to see Wizard World around much longer.
Well, I don't know. We keep saying that, but they might have a way of just reinventing themselves. So
I don't know
that because
the Shabas family are gone. They're a publicly held company now, which is why we know about this. And I'm sorry, I have yet to hear of them making a profit. Especially now that there are all these other conventions. A lot of the celebrities are only going to go. Basically, there's a bidding war for celebrities.
Yeah, and even regular comic guests. I mean, they have a lot of choices to go to, and some places they actually give a stipend or an appearance fee, which is something like we've talked in the past where the MCBA doesn't. What the MCBA does is they don't charge for their dealer tables. I mean, they fly in some.
No. They don't charge for the creator tables. They charge for dealer tables.
Yeah, the dealer table basically pays for the venue. Attendance pays for
everything else.
Show. Yeah, and that's one of the things that gets them in trouble because everybody and their uncle who has a crayon and a piece of paper wants to get in and get to one of the CBA show. And of course, as you and I know, the Fall Con show is a lot smaller than the big 2-day one, and they just can't fit a lot in. And what they've taken to doing is when it's open, you apply for it, and they will look at things. Have you published anything recently? Or you got something coming up? Right or wrong, but then again, they're giving it to you for free. And it's kind of hard because occasionally you get creators like, well, we got this book, we want to really promote it at the show, and it's like, well, if you're slow, like in this case, if you wanted to get the Fall Comic Con, the creator applications are done. They've got way more than they can fill, or I should say, way more than they can fit. And again, I'm not the guy making the decision as to who comes, but
and I'm really glad I'm not doing that because back when I was in charge, we really didn't have to worry about it. We would give local creators, but we didn't have a lot of the mini comic people and web comic people, and basically MCAD didn't have their comic book program. One of the things that's really ballooned in the last, I would say, 20 years, the Minnesota College of Art and Design has a comic book where you can learn how to make comic books. And they've had, some great people there. Paul Fricke, Max Collins, Peter Gross, people who know the business inside and out. So we've got a plethora How do you like that? Plethora.
Ooh.
Of people who just got out of college and are looking to make their mark.
They're hungry.
We didn't have that back, when I was in charge. Yeah, we had the local guys who'd been hired by Marvel, DC. We had some Image guys, but we were really, having to try and get the people from Chicago and Wisconsin. Come on over the border. Come on. Now we don't have to ever ask for any of the, I would say, I don't want to insult anybody, but anybody who's not a big name with Marvel or DC, if you're on a lower tier than that, we don't ever have to ask to fill up those slots. They're just, it's a local con that's really, really good to the local creators.
Yeah, a lot of fun. And they also work with the other ones, like you talked about Minnesota Fan Fusion. I mean, they come and they bring a table to the MCBA show, and Fan Fusion gives them a table to cross-promote. That was something woefully lacking when Wizard came to town. They thought they were going to come to town, and again, it's a matter of public record and a matter of things we talked about. They wanted to outright buy the show, and at the time, Nick Post was like, that's not that type of show. We don't really have assets. They're like, oh, okay, well, we'll put ours on 2 weeks before yours. And that happened to be, of course, Free Comic Book Day, which wasn't the most brilliant thing to do in a market, because Free Comic Book Day is a major, major event for any retailer, and they're going to split their attentions. We're going to do a comic show and do a Free Comic Book Day. I mean, I don't even know of anybody locally that did that. Maybe some of the bigger out-of-state guys could, do that.
Yeah, a lot of the local shops were just angry at him for doing it on that day. I'm looking at the list. The biggest name I see is Bob Hall.
Oh, the guy who used to walk into the shop every time we watch pro wrestling. Fake?
No. The comic creator Bob Hall, who worked on Iron Man.
I thought you meant one of my old customers.
No.
Bob Fake Hall. He says one word and it becomes a regular joke for the rest of the time I owned Hot Comics.
Is he the one who would talk about it and I go, yep, it's fake, just like Star Wars?
Yep. You get that confused look like, hey, wait a minute. It was funny, though. But the real Bob Hall.
Yep, the real Bob Hall. More bad Comic Con news, Joe.
Yes.
The MCBA, you know how they've changed it from Spring Con and Fall Con, names I thought up, to MCBA Comic Con? They may want to look into not doing that anymore.
Well, you got to remember, they're not Comic Con, 2 words. They're Comic Con, COMICON. So, again, if they're smart, they'll go out and trademark it. But yeah, maybe you're right. Go back to Spring Con, Fall Con, who we're still calling it, and you can just incorporate, MCBA comic or Spring Con comic show, or comic book show to, if you want to make a real unwordy, wordy title.
And the reason for that is the Salt Lake Comic Con has to pay the San Diego Comic Con $4 million.
I'm really curious who San Diego blew to get that ruling, because I found that an utter bullshit that they get the sole trademark for Comic Con.
Because
I've been going to Comic Con.
They bought the trademark.
There was no trademark to buy. This is what I think is bullshit. Obviously, the guy in the trademark office was just rubber stamping things, because I've been going to Comic Cons since I was 12. And just to decide, I mean, I suppose it's just part of the corporate bullshit. I mean, who's recently trying to patent WTF, LOL, and a few other of those icons? It's like, how do you patent these? They've been in use for years. But, you make a good enough use and you get some dumb troglodyte government employee to, oh yeah, that makes sense. You get Comic-Con. Well, again, I still don't, it still does it makes a zero lick of sense to me.
somebody online was talking about, we were discussing this in one of the comic groups on Facebook, and somebody said, I just think it's stupid that they could do that. It's like trademarking superhero. And I pointed out, DC and Marvel share the trademark for superhero, which is why everybody else calls their characters something different. Carlton called theirs action heroes. And
well, how long ago did they do that, though?
In the 60s, right after Dell put out a comic book called Superheroes.
Yeah, and see, back then, the idea that superhero comics would be so big, that was like that was kind of a no-brainer. I mean, yeah, there'd been superhero comics since the 40s, but up until Marvel and a little bit of DC, there was no, superhero. That wasn't even a term used. So that was actually foresight thinking. But the Comic-Con one, I don't know, something that's been in use for so long, and they can just come along, yeah, it's ours, we took it, it's ours, give me.
Well, because nobody else submitted a trademark. And nobody challenged it. That's the other thing. If you put in a trademark, it has to be challenged. WWE put in trademarks all the time. Every once in a while, they're challenged. And if they're challenged, then you have to do an investigation. But when Sandy Eggo put in, we want to trademark Comic-Con, nobody challenged it. Okay, it's passed through. There you go. Now, from what I hear, they don't enforce it a lot, but that was the ownership back then. You never know. A lot of the people who were involved in San Diego 20 years ago aren't involved in it anymore. They've left the board of directors. Other people have come on. Just because a company did something one way one time doesn't mean they're always going to do it, because there's turnover involved. Myself, do I like the fact that San Diego trademarked Comic-Con? No. But somebody was going to do it. There's too much money involved. And when they have the trademark, it's like Kleenex. If you mention Kleenex, you have to put the trademark notice.
Or Popsicle, or Xerox, or, in some places like Xerox, they worked hard to keep people from calling it that.
Well, they had to, because if it becomes standard usage, they lose the trademark.
So what you're saying is the comic industry, once again, shows that they're a bunch of dumbass morons, and nobody challenged them.
Right. It's, well, Joe, do you remember back in the 80s when Cerebus and the Roach became Wolveroach?
Yeah.
First time they did it, everybody at Marvel, oh yeah, that's pretty funny. Second time they did it, Marvel went, okay. Third time they did it, well, we got to send a cease and desist order. Because if you don't show you're protecting your trademark, you lose it.
Well, who would champion that?
See, they didn't protect that one, and another company. Now, I wish I knew the deal for them to get it back, but I know that money changed hands. And talking movies, Joe, you've seen Night of the Living Dead, right?
No, I haven't, actually.
You've never seen Night of the Living Dead?
No, I've seen enough of it, so I know how it goes and ends and what happens, but I've never sat down and watched the whole thing beginning to end.
Well, you should. Fantastic movie, still holds up. I have the Criterion disc, and it's just a beautiful print and everything. But the original name of the movie was Night of the Anubis, or Night of Anubis. And the distributor said, we don't like that title, we're going to give it a different title. So they gave it the title Night of the Living Dead. Well, Night of Anubis had the copyright notice on it. They changed the title, so they took that title card out and put on Night of the Living Dead. And on Night of the Living Dead, there was no copyright notice. And because they had put it on the title card, the copyright notice was nowhere else in the movie. Movie comes out, it's a huge success. It's making money hand over fist. And the other thing about it, it didn't cost much, because it was made by these people. They didn't have a lot of money. They basically made local Philadelphia and Pittsburgh commercials. So this movie is raking in millions of dollars till all of a sudden, not the main distributor, but another distributor says this movie's not copyrighted. So they make their own print. And then somebody else makes their own print. And when the filmmakers went, hey, you can't do that. Sorry, there's no copyright notice. If you don't put a copyright notice on it, the movie is public domain.
Just like Rescue from Gilligan's Island.
Or for the longest,
the theme song is still trademarked or copyrighted.
Or for the longest time, It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life fell out of trademark, but then the family of the guy who wrote the short story it's based on, claimed copyright based, because hey, this story is still under copyright, therefore we own the copyright to the movie. That's why it's now only on once a year on NBC, whereas when I was a kid, every channel showed it all the goddamn time. But Night of the Living Dead, same thing. That movie was on all the time because it had fallen into public domain. You've got to defend your copyright. You've got to defend your trademark. And if Sandy Eggo doesn't defend that trademark, it falls into public domain. So if you're a comic convention out there, you could call yourself a comic book convention. You could call yourself a comic book con. You could call yourself whatever. But you doesn't want to call it a Comic Con.
Nope.
If you come to the attention of Sandy Eggo, and like I said, 10 years ago, they were just trademarking it because it was a smart thing to do. For all we know now, the new people in charge are like, well, we need more money. We can't expand further, and we can't fit any more people in. So
we've already kicked out all the comic book guys. We need more Hollywood types, and to do that, we need more money.
Yep, that very well could be. Or let's face it,
we might be wrong.
The guys in charge of the Minneapolis convention, they're three guys who wanted to carry on Nick's legacy. Well, for all we know, maybe somebody else will come along. They get burned out on doing it, kind of like Brian Wilson did. Come to him and say, hey, a Wizard World comes to him and says, hey, we're going to buy this. And they offer enough money that it's sold, and it still has the same name. But then they go, yeah, you local guys, we're not letting you in. You got to be published, or you got to pay for a table, or you got to do this, or you got to do that. And we're going to bring in, we're going to bring in all the people from Walking Dead. And ticket admission's going to go from $14 to $50. You never know what's going to happen because the management changes. One other thing where management changed, Joe, and it's kind of connected to conventions. See that?
I thought maybe us. We're under new management.
Well, we did that for episode 52, and people didn't care for it.
Yeah. Well, we never went back. We never changed back.
Although, if someone wants to buy this here podcast, if someone wants to buy the Solitaire Rose Network, I am up for sale.
He will whore himself out to whatever. You want to give him money, give him pie, give him fireball pie.
Give me the phone number of that cute girl at work today who was dressed like she lived at the Renaissance Festival.
Oh my.
Oh my. Not only am I a national treasure, we're both a national treasure. This show is a national treasure, but we will sell out in a heartbeat. The people who, well, I have integrity, I'll never sell out. I am not one of those people, Joe. I will sell out in a heartbeat.
That's true. I will sell you out in a heartbeat.
You have in the past.
I didn't get anything for it, though, so it's not a technical sellout.
Yeah, I know. That's a problem. Neither one of us got anything out of it other than heartburn.
I shouldn't have put the return clause in. Damn it.
But at another convention, two people who would not have talked years ago hung out together, spent a lot of time talking about maybe when I'm working for the other. Joe, did you see that John Byrne was hanging out with C.B. Cebulski?
No.
Yes. Byrne has been talking about how he wants to, what was that series? X-Men Forever. Chris Claremont did an X-Men Forever, which is what he would have done if he continued the X-Men back in 1991, which isn't true. There's no way he would have killed Wolverine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I thought that was... I was actually excited about that series until he pulled that, and then I'm like, no. Sorry. It's not like, back then that was the big thing, I don't think killing off your hero was a big thing until the death of Superman, and then it's like, oh, well, how can we drop this?
No, Jean Grey, the death of Jean Grey was huge, but there's no way.
Yeah, but that wasn't the big media circus like the whole death of Superman was. I mean, and if anything, I think that came out of left field. Most of the time when a superhero died, it was kind of like, really? We did that? And thinking like when Neil Gaiman killed off Elemental Girl, or Sargon the Sorcerer was toasted by Alan Moore in Swamp Thing. People were like, really? He killed him? Oh, okay.
Well, another thing to remember is X-Men was not...
Didn't know he was sick.
X-Men was not the #1 book at Marvel until the death of the Phoenix. That was the issue that made them the #1 comic. Bet you didn't know that.
I did, because that's when I started buying it.
But John Byrne's been talking about doing his own sort of X-Men Forever on his message board, where he would pick up the X-Men when he left the book. And he was just going to do it for fun. Well, he was at a convention, and he and C.B. Cebulski spent a lot of time together. So rumors have begun to fly. Here's my question, Joe. If John Byrne were to do a series that picked up, what was his last issue? X-Men 144?
Right after...
The Kitty Pryde versus the Alien.
Yep.
Would you pick up a book by John Byrne that picked up at that point?
I'm trying not to yawn, to tell you the truth. I mean, I don't see anybody caring, in all honesty. It's such a faraway event that I don't think current comic fans would care. They'd be like, John who? And... again, maybe guys like me go, yeah, John Byrne, he on book again. Very good. He make a character binary. Never last. But I honestly, I don't think that's a winner. It might last a few issues. There might be people that are going, I might pick it up just for the art. But in all honesty, I mean, I'm so over the X-Men right now. Even their red, white, and blue latest series just didn't do it for me. And I don't think, if John Byrne came and did a current series, said, okay, I want these X-Men, these are who I'm going with, in the current continuity, that would get my attention. But, I mean, good Lord. I was in high school when that came out. Who cares? I don't get it. I don't even know if fans my age would care. That's kind of interesting, though. I mean, would you?
No. And
I'd have to ask Gruber, would he want to buy that? Would that be something he'd be into?
Well, my reason for it is, do I need to follow yet another alternate universe? That was the problem I had with X-Men.
Kill off Wolverine.
Yeah, that was my problem with X-Men Forever. It's like, okay, these are nice little stories that are off in their own little universe and everything. I'll say this, though. I don't want Byrne playing in the modern, quote-unquote, Marvel Universe. I really don't. The last few times he did, it was terrible. His run on Spider-Man sucked. His retconning of the Vision sucked. Marvel took 2 decades to get over what he did to the Vision. He took a popular character and destroyed it. Made the character unworkable for 2 decades. He always wants to kind of undo what other people have done. So rather than have him coming in, pissing on all the trees, John Byrne wants to come back at Marvel. Great. Do self-contained graphic novel / trade paperbacks. Kind of like the Lee Kirby Silver Surfer in the 70s. Have John Byrne come back. Okay, you want to do a Fantastic Four story? Great. Here's 168 pages. When it's done, we'll put it out as a $25 hardcover. Or, you want to do your Avengers story? Great. Do a standalone graphic novel. Kind of contain his stuff and put it in a format that people would enjoy. Kind of like how Jim Starlin is doing the Thanos stuff in original graphic novels. That way, it's a high enough price point that the fans who are our age, who really like John Byrne, can buy it and they don't have to worry about selling 50,000 copies of it. But also so that it's kind of set apart, so it's not it's not John Byrne rewriting everything. Because that was why he fell out of favor with me. He kept rewriting everything. Rather than telling a news story, it's, no, Roy Thomas was wrong. No, Steve Englehart was wrong. No, Chris Claremont can suck my dick. I liked X-Men The Hidden Years because, okay, here's this time. You've got this huge gap of time that he could fit stories into. Kind of like the same reason I liked Untold Tales of Spider-Man. You could fit these stories in between continuity. They fit, but they're not needed. For X-Men The Hidden Years, they fit, but they weren't needed, and it was during the era that John Byrne wants to play in. John Byrne's become the grumpy old man who doesn't like the new stuff. That was better when I was a kid. Okay, good. Do stories when you were a kid. What do you think he's gone back and he's redoing Star Trek? It's what he liked when he was a kid. He wants to do that now. Cool. Go do that. Let's see. What else? I can't think of a good segue for this one, Joe, but I saw IDW's stuff that they're coming out with. One of their books kind of made me go, huh? You know how they're doing the Star Wars stuff that's aimed at kids? They're doing a Spider-Man comic.
Sure, why not? That's the Disney way. You license out and get that revenue coming in. Maybe they're just working on a day to when Marvel utterly fails and they can just license out all of Marvel.
Well, the premise of it is that Peter Parker and Miles Morales are both Spider-Man. They're around the same age, and they're both Spider-Man. And I don't know if that's an upcoming animated series or not, but I saw that, and it's like, I can't think of a time when Marvel let one of their core characters be done by another company.
Probably not their choice. But if it brings in revenue, that's all that matters.
That's true. It would be weird if other companies started... Well, yeah, the Image thing doesn't count because even though it was packaged by Image, it was printed by Marvel. The Marvel Knights thing was basically... Joe Quesada's company got folded into Marvel. What was that? Where he published Ash. Event Comics.
Yeah.
Marvel Knights was basically Event Comics folded into Marvel. But IDW is going to be doing a kid-based Spider-Man book, which, Marvel's tried to do kids' books for ages, and they just don't fly. Well, except for the magazine they do. Have you ever seen that Marvel magazine that's been going for like 7-8 years?
No.
At grocery stores?
Nope.
It's,
And believe me, I haunt the magazine aisles.
I forget the name of it, but it's, got a story that is in the front and the back, and then there are puzzles and, basically it's like Marvel Fun and Games in the middle where it's, here's a crossword and here's a maze and here's a coloring page and here's some trivia questions and here's a bunch of crap for the cartoons that are coming out. But I was a little surprised, but IDW going to do a Spider-Man comic. And the new Tilting at Windmills came out. It's been about 5-6 months since Brian Hibbs did a new column. And the reason why is...
running a couple of stores, you get a little busy there. You just can't sit down and just pen out columns.
Well, he may not have that problem soon.
That's what I was reading.
He has 2 stores. One is his main store that has slowly over the last 20 years become far more focused on graphic novels and books. Then a few years ago, he bought a store that, and it was, kind of your classic comic book shop. And no matter how hard he has tried, he can't get the graphic novel sales to go up. It's very much where they just sell the monthlies, or floppies as people call them. And now the building is about to be torn down, so he's having to decide, does he want to move someplace and pay a higher rent, or just shut the shop down? And I was thinking about Uncle Sven's when I talked about it, when I read that. Because Uncle Sven's was the first comic shop in Minnesota, right, Joe?
I wouldn't say the first, but I would say it's the longest lasting.
I thought their gimmick was that they were the first.
No. You talk with Joe Thingvall. There were other people before them, but they're probably the only one that's still around.
And they were about to shut down. And you probably know a lot more about this than I do. Nick could not bear the fact that they were about to shut down and had the source buy them. Is that accurate?
I think it was pretty accurate, because I know the Uncle Sven, the namesake, he actually contacted me about buying the shop. And it wasn't for a lot of money. It was mostly he just wanted to keep it going. He wanted to keep his employees going. And at the time, I was closing Crazy Comics, and I was kind of like, well, I just am closing one. I don't really want to open another one and keep it going. But he got the attention of Nick, and then Nick, again, like you said, he wanted to keep it going. And he did. He basically remodeled it, refurbished all the stock, and they actually, when I talked with Bob last, he said it's actually holding its own for what they wanted to do.
Now, what are the major differences from before Nick bought it to after?
I would say more graphic novels, as most shops, actually, I should say no shops use the cover to advertise the book. Everything's spine. But they loaded up with that. They loaded up more cheap books, which I think they've since pulled. And then they got the classic wire racks where they can put multiple months on top of each other and let it sit. Now, as for pulling, the second store is sort of a secondary choice. I mean, if they need more at the mothership, as one of the employees calls it, they will get more, whereas they will only put a few on the shelf. It's still pretty much a subscription store. If you want a certain book, subscribe to it. You can certainly get it. I mean, they have books going back and forth constantly. But I know on, and again, this is all old information, but it used to be, I think, one of the guys would come in on Tuesday getting ready to set up for the new comic book day, and he would basically just clean the shelves of all the old stock and put up the new things. And then the current employee would go in, and then between Wednesday, Thursday, he would stop at the big store, get books for his shelves, and so on and so on. So there was always a good balance going in between that. So if it's not going to sell within the first week, it'll go back to the big source store, and so on and so on. They keep the core graphic novels in. They have games. They have candies. So yeah, I think for the space they do, they're actually, it's kind of, I think, what I was modeling Crazy Comics after. And for the most part succeeded, but the only thing that different is, for me, I would, Kristen from Hot Comics and then Nick, of course, from the source, they would come in on Friday or Saturday, and I'd be like, hey, if there's anything left, take it, because I have a 1 week shelf life on pretty much all the books. After that, they would just hang until like a Comic-Con would come around. I'd bring them and blow them out then.
Now, if you were faced with his decision as a shop owner, and, we could put any sort of, conditions on it we want, but just based on what was in the article, and Tilting at Windmills is at The Beat, which you can find on Google by just typing in The Beat Comics.
And it's number 270, because a lot of times old columns will pop up and you'll find yourself joining a discussion from 3 years ago.
Yeah. But But if you had to make his decision, what would you do?
Well, the one thing that stood out as I browsed through the article is that he says he's not making a lot of money at this shop. And he's got a classic conundrum, which I had in Crazy Comics. The location is bad. It's hard to see. There's limitations. But the rent is cheap. In order to move, he'd have to take his tiny profit that he makes from running it. And I don't know what he said, double his rent, get a better location, maybe worse parking. He's not in an area that the shop integrates itself. I think he said he had service industries on either side of him. And really, it's kind of like with Crazy Comics. It wasn't a browsing shop. It was a destination shop. You could come to Crazy Comics once and probably see everything that was there, even though I was constantly bringing in new stuff every week. I didn't want to move it because I didn't want to do the bigger rent. But then again, Pat and I talked about that when we had Hot Comics where it was. If we'd have moved north, even just a couple blocks, the rent just doubled. And by the time you get to the higher traffic area, it tripled. And we're like, we're doing okay where we are now. So moving, closer to the freeways or closer to the malls wasn't necessarily an option. The key is he says he makes a tiny profit from running it. But the question is that what he wants to spend his time doing? And he doesn't really answer that. He goes on and on again about saying, and this is things we've talked about. I'm trying to find the term he used. It's not speculators buying book, but the retailers buying books in order to get all the variant covers that they can flip as fast as they can, a quick in and out from whatever's hot. Oh, there it is. Our big trigglers. I can't even say the word. And let's see, what are we talking here? It's the practice of taking advantage of a price difference between two or more markets. And he says that's kind of what's grinding the gears of ordering in the direct market. I mean, sure, Fantastic Four 1 sold, what was he saying? 300,000 comics. But eventually it's going to drop to 35K is what he's thinking. Maybe 50K if they're lucky. So what's the point of having 300K sold if it's going to drop to 50K by issue 5? He says, who's buying all these extra copies? And that's the type of thing that I think drives Brian insane, at least listening to his. I mean, you tell me. We listen to what he goes on and on about monthly comics. And it's just a model that I don't think the way it's going, he doesn't agree with how it's running. And I think he may be happier just sticking with the bookstore format because he's worked hard to get that to work, and he's actually he makes a living doing that. Is it worth keeping the smaller store open? I doubt. Would he be able to? I don't know how far apart are the stores. Does he even say?
I don't remember him saying.
Yeah, because I mean, could you get the two to merge? Was his clientele at the comic book shop go to his other store, the bookstore thing, or would they just kind of do what most people do: stop buying, go online, go somewhere else, or just disappear? So yeah, he's got an interesting decision to make. It's interesting because he has one store that's allowing him to live what he needs to do, and then this other one is just kind of, for whatever reason, he jumped in it and kept it going. But I don't know if he's having any fun doing it. I think DC and Marvel are constantly confusing the hell out of him.
Yeah, he talks a lot about how DC and Marvel will make his life hell. And
I mean,
I couldn't agree more.
Unless he thrives on that, and we all know the people who thrive on negative stuff, and you're almost like, it sounds like you're almost enjoying this negativity. Brian doesn't strike me as that, but he might be better off just, you know what, I gave it a shot. Hey, anybody wants to come over to my big store, I'll take care of you, but Let it go. Cut the headaches.
That's kind of my feeling, the way he talks about it and the frustration he has with that monthly market. Well, I've talked for 30 years about how I'm amazed that comics still have the monthly market, whereas with, regular writing, they had where it would be published in a magazine, then collected as a book for, just your reading fiction, your Tarzan books, your kind of stuff that's not literature. It's, okay, here's each chapter. All right, all the chapters are done. Now it's out as a book. Manga does that, where here are the chapters in the magazine. All right, now we're going to collect it in a book. And I thought comics were going to move to that in the 90s, especially when you had the 95, 96 collapse. But they didn't. And now I'm wondering if it's just kind of going to be a slow death over time as, people like us die out. But if you're not enjoying it, if you really don't get into the monthly groove and you live for Wednesday, it can be a grind. It can be a pain in the ass. I know at the small shop, some of the regulars would come in on Friday and they talk about how, it's becoming such a pain to go to the comic shop every week. They don't have any other hobby where they do that. And video games. People are into video games. They don't have to show up every Tuesday to pick up the new games. Movies. I remember when I worked in video stores, it used to be, people would be there on Tuesday because that's new movie day. And then by the 2000s, people would just come in on the weekend. And what's new? It wasn't, a rush to get what's new. It's okay, I'm here, what's new. I know for me, I much prefer getting my comics in the mail because if I had to drive to a shop every week to pick up stuff, I mean, that's 3-4 hours out of my week that I wouldn't have.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody's like for me. I mean, I'm in the middle of the city. It's not a major deal for me to run over to the Source or down to brain fart. There's a comic store in South St. Paul we visited. I'm so embarrassed I don't remember the name. But again, I'm closer. It's not a major deal to come out. And, you Google comic shops, there's a large portion that of the nation that just is not covered with a comic shop. And, mail may be the way to do it. Maybe the only way to do it. Obviously, we like Discount Comic Book Service, but there's other services around that do it.
Westfield's been doing it for how many decades now?
Yeah, they were when I was a kid. And I remember, I've talked fondly about buying not new comics, but back issues through Mile High Comics, because they'd run that big ad in all the Marvel magazines, and then you could get a catalog. And there were titles I would just, okay, I'm going to start with Ms. Marvel and Black Panther #1 and just read them, and every month order a different #2, #3, so on. And in the meantime, I could run down to Dreamhaven or St. Paul Comic. Well, Dreamhaven at the time was called Twin City Comics, and just buy the weeklies then. Weeklies are kind of a dying habit. I think graphic novels are the way to go. I see it at the library. I mean, my kids will do it. Yeah, they like comics, but they don't go out of their way to buy them. They'll just as soon buy it as a graphic novel, or if they hear something's a must-read, if I didn't buy it, they'll wait for the graphic novel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see online being a big thing, but, if it suddenly breaks in a decent format, comes where you can actually watch something on the phone. I mean, panel by panel is just a pain in the butt to watch on a tablet.
Well, have you heard that Nintendo now, you're going to be able to buy comics on your Nintendo Switch?
I don't know of anybody who cares. But again,
how many people,
I don't know anybody.
How many people do you know who have a Nintendo Switch, though, Joe?
I know quite a few that have it, but not many care. You know,
Know a
again,
lot of
they
teenagers,
probably
though.
bought it. I did, although they're all starting to become college age kids.
Yeah.
So, again, I don't know. It'll happen until the next upgrade.
For me, it's I'm buying them through. I've switched over to digital and trades, and I imagine more and more people they're either once you get to a certain point, it's all right. There's too much crap in my house. How many times have you said, "All right, I'm getting rid of all this stuff"?
Weekly. And what's also interesting too, and this is something that Brian kind of is worried about, is he says there's, he picks on DC and Marvel, but a lot of times Image is a problem too. And I'll just read the quote. He says a really shitty Image comic might sell 5 copies, or it might sell 1, or it might sell none because there's not any real brand awareness. Makes it a random crapshoot to order Image books.
Yeah.
And I would say almost anything, even if it's Dark Horse, Oni, Dynamite, or anything else. And of course, back to the quote, they are all creator owned. Even if you succeed in building an audience from hand selling and a passion, you have no idea what the production schedule might be. He goes on to say Bitch Planet, which had sowed the seeds of their own sales irrelevance through the basic sin of not producing any more work in a timely fashion. Or he says we got the risk of losing our single best-selling periodical for an entire year.
Yeah.
Saga, we're looking at you. Yeah, they want to take a break. But, Batman's still going to be published every month. That was something McFarlane would complain about. He said, people are buying all these itty-bitty books because of Spawn. And he was right in a sense, because we were selling so many copies of Spawn, I could afford to buy an occasional Bitch Planet, or try Walking Dead, or Saga, or Skate Man, or Miss Mystic, or any of these other goofy titles that have, you and I look at when the cons roll around, dig through the dollar boxes or quarter boxes and go, yeah, I remember that title. Drop it back. So, yeah, I don't know. Will anybody care about Saga when it comes back in a year? Will they come back in a year?
Yep, that's the thing. It's I think Saga will continue to sell. I think it could take a break. It's a lot like Bone in that way. But
I hope.
Man,
well, this podcast is an example of what you said. When we got down and said, okay, we're going to do this weekly, that's when we started to get an audience. Every Monday, without fail, or hip operation or eyelid operation or whatever, there will be a new podcast here waiting for you. Maybe we should stop doing weeklies and just do big 12-hour book formats.
No, there was a podcast that did that, and I quit listening to it.
I don't blame you. Sometimes I think we push the boundary. I mean, we were like, yeah, we're just going to do a quick half-hour podcast, but I think we hit a good stride.
I agree. I think we're okay.
Notice I said stride, not strode.
Well, because stride is the present tense, strode is past tense.
Yes, and that's one thing we've always said about Cory. He's always past tense.
I'm always tense.
That's true.
Well, you know who's not tense, Joe?
Is it Matt Wagner's sons? Colors removed them from the Batman comic, Matt drew, because they don't meet DC's standard color scheme for Batman?
No.
Oh.
It's these guys, our sponsors. That's right, here at the Solitaire Rose Radio Network, we have ads, and our first sponsor is me. That's right, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. I have my first book out with Dangerous Dan Moore. It's the first 100 strips of our online web strip, Worldwide News, the story of the lowest rated cable news network. And you can get yourself a copy with commentary, with all sorts of extras, with signatures and everything. Just email Dan over at lordshadowflame@gmail.com. Our top sponsor, who's been with us since day one, is DreamHost. DreamHost.com. You need yourself a website, and DreamHost.com is the #1 web host in the whole known universe. Just head over to DreamHost.com, put in the code KRAYZ, KRAYZ, get $20 off your first year. How can you beat that? Our other sponsor is Graze, GRAZE.com. Healthy snacks for a healthy lifestyle. Just head over to Graze, put in the code CORYS 3R5P. Your first and fifth box are free. You can get them weekly. You can get them bi-weekly. You can get them monthly. You can just order a whole bunch of them. It's great stuff to keep you away from the vending machine at work. Now, if you would like to leave a comment for any of the podcasts that we do, we'd love those. Go ahead and email us at solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com, or you can call 952-856-0519. Operators are standing by. Okay, it's just a place that we'll record your calls, but we'll play them on the air. We'll answer your questions. We love getting feedback. Tell us what you think. Ask a question. Suggest a topic. Be a guest. Send us your stuff. solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com. If you would like to advertise on any of the Solitaire Rose radio shows, you can. Just email us at solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com. Subject advertising. Thanks. And after we talk about the sponsors, we plug what's coming up. I have weekends off, kind of, sort of, again. The weekend after...
when there's not a good pay-per-view on.
Well, even if there is a good pay-per-view, I'm still not working. And you can tell when I'm not working because if you follow me on the Facebooks, you'll see that I'm filling in the gaps for our podcast out on YouTube. So you can always check us there. But there are all kinds of podcasts that I do that aren't this one. And here's me talking about them. The Solitaire Rose Radio Network has all sorts of podcasts. We've got Scrabbling Across the West with Dave Cafell and his lovely bride Stephanie. They travel across the country playing musical gigs, and at night they sit down to play Scrabble and talk about their day at scrabbling.solitairerose.com. There's Novelcast over at novels.solitairerose.com, where I take the novels that I've written and turn them into audio podcasts. Currently, we are doing a novel called Do the Job, which is a murder mystery set in the world of 1980s professional wrestling. Then, over at badadvice.solitairerose.com, me, Cory Strode, and Wolfie B. Bad, along with Dan Moore, give bad advice to people who send in questions. That's bad advice over at badadvice.solitairerose.com. The Solitaire Rose Radio Network is growing. Be there! You think NBC will get mad I used that? And now that we're done talking about all the stuff that I do, we get to Joe's favorite part of the show. Where Cory goes to Megan Hetrick's website and orders all of the prints that are on deep, deep discount.
Oh, I thought maybe we were going to do some extreme belching.
No. It's Joe, what's going on the eBays?
I actually had a pretty decent eBay week. A lot of things sold, things we've talked about in the past, like we've talked about the infamous Nightcat, the comic book, and of course the CD that had recording artist Jacqueline Therese trying to, I think that was one of Stan Lee's idea, wasn't it? Synchronize a comic book with a music artist.
Well, actually, I should dig into that a little more. I was reading the story from the editor behind it, who talked about it was kind of, Marvel was getting into Marvel music. And they were putting together comics that sold at concerts, and they thought, they were going to brand this as kind of a Marvel singing act. And it just, the problem was she wasn't all that good.
Yeah.
So.
And we'll never know because I sold my CD along with a Nightcat comic book that came with it. And of the two, the CD is actually more rare and harder to find. The Nightcat comic is pretty much in quarter boxes everywhere. Another thing we've talked about, I think we talked about the New Monkeys. Cory, you remember that TV show from the 1987?
I never saw it, but I do remember it.
I saw one episode and it didn't strike me as all that funny. And I think the problem was they were way ahead of their time in terms of, cut pace and non sequiturs and things like that. I sold the actual CD that I had, which again is a collector's item because nobody bought it, nobody cared, nobody was listening. And I actually had a 45 RPM, which for you kids is a revolution per minute. It's actually kind of a 7-inch disc with a large hole, and you put it on a record player. Set it on 45, or if you really like, high music, set it on 33. Or no, that was low, wasn't it? It would make it. Well, actually, it made Take a Chance on Me from ABBA sound like a Marine choir. Take a chance on me. Anyways, I had the New Monkeys 45. I must have played it when I was on college radio station because that's the only reason I could think of buying a 45. At the time, the radio station, which was then WMMR, now Radio K, hadn't made the switch to CDs, mostly because of funding. So I would go to the local music store. I would look at the billboards, and if I saw a new song popping up, I would buy the 45. One thing interesting, if you are collecting 45s, they are more collectible if they actually had a picture sleeve with them, as opposed to just the generic sleeve that you can see the label. And this one did have the New Monkeys on it, and had a couple of their songs, and stuck it up on eBay, done sell it. So we got two music things, and maybe half a comic thing. Lest you think I'm just selling music this week, and I do have some up, I sold a copy, actually a 5-issue set of Star Trek Assignment Crew. This was a 2009 IDW miniseries from John Byrne, back when he was actually drawing. And this one dealt with the number one and the crew from that era of Star Trek. I'm trying to think of Captain Pike and that. So actually really good. I have the IDW John Byrne Omnibus for all the Star Trek he drew, including some really good stories between the Romulans and the Klingons around that era. So I definitely, I don't need the comics because I have the Omnibus, and definitely worth picking up in that. The last thing I'll taught on, let's ask the Strode.
What?
Mr. Strode.
Yeah?
Tell us about Reed Fleming, World's Toughest Milkman.
That was started as either a mini comic or a not a web strip, a comic strip. But it is a humor book about a rebellious milkman. And for the life of me, I cannot remember the cartoonist's name, but I read it when
David Boswell.
David Boswell, who did a serious comic that no one remembers.
No one.
And it was first published by Eclipse back in the 80s, and it's some of the funniest damn stuff you've ever read. He trashed milk trucks, threw milk at his customers. Some of the jokes still live in my head. Like, he and his boss both were kind of balding on top, and he would bond with his boss over it, but then when he would be mad at his boss, he would go, I cut my hair to look like this!
Do you think it'd be a good team-up between Reed Fleming, World's Toughest Milkman, and Evan Dorkin's Milk and Cheese?
No. Very different styles, but I do think, and wasn't there a team-up between Reed Fleming and Flaming Carrot?
I believe so.
They were both that weird, absurdist style.
I won't know because I had the hardcover that IDW came out with in 2010, and it's out of print and consequently a collector's item.
Ooh.
So I done put it on the eBays and sold it.
Ooh.
It's not all bad news, though. Corey, you remember the Tangled Web, the Spider-Man comic that came out in 2001?
Yes. Love that book.
Yeah, Garth Ennis started it out. Now, do you remember the variation on number one?
I do not.
What happened was there was a misprinted version. This was supposed to be a cover, a glossy paper that was supposed to be more high-end, and they had a number of misprinted versions that came out, and of course they were all supposed to be returned. For whatever reason, Diamond didn't actually ask for them back. So if you have a copy of that, they're running about $22 mint, and I sold a copy of it. However, I have one left. So if this is your type of thing and you're looking to try to pick one up, run over to my eBays at Crazy, Krayz, and I've got mine at an incredibly low price of only $9.99. And of course,
$9.99? You're out of your mind.
I am, but if you ask nicely and tell me you listen to this here podcast and you really, really want it, I will take a buy it now offer, and I may toss in an extra special thing. It could be a copy of Worldwide News by Strode and Moore that I have sitting here. It could be this this wasp slammer that you could use. It also comes with a set of 6 foil caps because, as we all know, Pogs are making a comeback now. So check it out. I'll be putting more stuff on. I'll be Ray pricing the old stuff. Ray pricing. Yes, Ray is a tough guy, and he likes it low. So have some fun, and you know what else to do.
Well, and now we get to my favorite part of the show.
Bathroom break.
No, not where I talk endlessly about the eye makeup on the Renaissance Fest girl who was at work today. It's freaking and geeking. Joe, what are you freaking on?
Well, this isn't so much a freaking, but I leave it there because, of course, the ever-popular segment, Hip Watch.
Joe, you're such a hipster.
I am. And I'm happy to say that the second cortisone shot seems to have worked. It's not as well as the first one. Remember, my right hip was the one that went down, and that actually feels 100%. I'm not having the crippling pain like I had about, was it 3 weeks ago or a month ago, where I basically just spent the weekend hobbling around the house and inventing curse words because the current ones we have just didn't cut the pain level I felt. Still a little sore. I mean, I was walking around today, and I do feel a little achy. I feel the twinges. I'm not quite sure if it's kicked in or maybe this is just the best it's going to be. I did talk to the surgeon, not the surgeon, but the doctor who does the cortisone shot, and he says when I do finally get the hip operation, which is still 3 months away, I got to deal with this shit for 3 months. While I'm under, they can do another cortisone shot on my left hip because it's going to be, I told him it'd be a real bitch to try to rehab the right hip if I can't walk on the left hip. So that's something I'll bring up with the surgeon when we get going. On other news, I'm real concerned about the blood sugar spiking, which it did, but within a day it went back down to normal. So that seems to be going really well. And I guess you have officially closed the contest to find 4 sponsors, or I should say replacements for me while I'm recuperating in December.
Why, yes, I have. One of whom is a former podcaster who hasn't done it for a few years. Another of whom is a college professor who has never done a podcast.
Oh, and Reginald, right?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I would postpone the surgery if Reginald was coming back.
That's
how much that's how much I care about our listeners out there. I would take the personal discomfort over letting him grace our airways again.
Reginald's email has been blocked. There are only a few people who have blocked their emails. One is Reginald. I don't take emails from raccoons. And one other person that I had a falling out with 20 years ago that Joe actually tried to be Frank Sinatra to our Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. And unlike Jerry Lewis, I did not allow that reunion to take place.
But on the plus side, you were, how would you say, tolerant.
I'm always tolerant.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like you were, hey, you know what? I'm really pissed that you still just get away from me. You just kind of, he's there. He'll disappear eventually.
Yep. I'm always tolerant. I am a kind person, no matter what stories are floating out there about me and shotguns.
Oh, then I'll stop spreading that story.
That's good. Although somebody on Twitter, one of our listeners on Twitter, said that they would leave a key under their front mat if I wanted to drive down and clean their place. And I said, well, if I did that, then you'd never listen to the show again.
Well, they would. They would just do it the way people listen to Howard Stern, seething and writing criticism. And at 4 minutes and 20 seconds, Cory's heartbeat annoyed me. So
I wonder if that's going on here.
And that's the thing too, is people,
I don't care if you hate listen as long as you visit the sponsors.
Exactly. I mean, it's like what they said when the Private Parts movie, they were talking about, people who like Howard Stern listen an hour. People who dislike him listen to him for 2 hours. It's just amazing. And we're all about that. We'll sell out that way. I love me my Walgreens exclusive Legend Marvel toys, right, Cory?
Sure.
Yeah, well, fuck Walgreens. they did the exclusives of the Fantastic Four. The first one came out way back when Marvel was busy disowning Fantastic Four, because if you recall that podcast, I said they might be coming back because they've since come out with Invisible Woman with a little Herbie robot, the Mr. Fantastic, the Human Torch, and who do you think would be the next one in line, Corey?
Power Man?
Close, Medusa.
Oh,
After Medusa, who do you think would be next?
Crystal?
Silver Surfer.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you've talked a lot about your giant-sized man thing, and all I want is just a thing. But apparently, either Walgreens either under-ordered them or every speculator in the universe has snapped them, because they're only running a measly $100 on the eBay right now.
Holy cats!
I know, the thing originally ran $20. I just want a freaking Fantastic Four set.
You just want a thing.
I've been collecting this shit. I just actually ran across the original receipt that dates back a couple of years ago. And I'm just pissed because I can't get it now. And again, maybe it's just they haven't come out yet. At the Human Torch, everyone's like, oh, they're sold out. You'll never find them. Well, I found 2 of them today as I was wandering around the Walgreens. The Silver Surfer figure is sold out. And that's, running for $40, $50 on the eBays. Actually found one of those. So maybe it's just too soon. But
too soon.
I've been doing this toy shit for a long time, and I just know it's probably they're either one of 2 things are happening. They're either not out in big numbers yet, or they're gone. I talked with one guy at the Walgreens, and he says, well, the deal is, we just ordered these exclusives. We have no idea what's coming. So it could very well be there's a cargo ship full of things waiting to be distributed because they're still pushing out the Invisible Woman. I don't know. All I know is I'm a little miffed.
Pushing out Herbie.
And I'm kind of like, if you really want to sell these things, Walgreens, if you really want to make yourself a toy destination, especially since Toys R Us is gone, this ain't the way to do it. So, and on top of that, Corey, you know what Sweet Martha cookies are, right?
Why, yes, I do. They sell them at the fair.
Yep. A big steaming bucket of chewy, the most delicious.
F-word.
They're awesome cookies. People stand in line waiting for them. They've got 3 areas. All my kids and my wife have gone to the state fair. Nobody brought me back Sweet Martha cookies until my wife brought back a small bag of them. And she put them in the freezer, and my daughter, the same one who didn't bring me any, ate them. I'm telling you, man, it's killing me that less than 5 miles away, there's piles of Sweet Martha cookies just waiting to be devoured. And I deserve it. My blood sugar's under control. I want some cookies. Hey, Corey, what are you freaking on?
Joe, you said on the face tabs that you watched Disenchanted.
I did.
I am 5 episodes in. I keep hearing that the last 3 episodes are really, really good. But boy, is this a horrible slog to get through. I'm not saying the show is bad. It's just dull. The characters aren't interesting. The jokes aren't very good. The elf character, he wants to leave the land of elves because everybody's there is happy all the time, and he wants to learn what it's like to have other emotions. And out in the real world, he's happy all the time.
You know what the big problem with the show is? You have to pay attention. Unlike Simpsons and Futurama, where you can pretty much pick up any Futurama and sit down and have a good half hour, they're trying something different, and it didn't occur to me until after I finished watching it. There's a reason why he is that way.
Yeah.
And you don't find out about it until... it's one of the later episodes.
Yeah, I hear the last 3 episodes, it really picks up. But
it's like Babylon 5, trying to slog through those early ones, because everybody's looking at it like, oh, Matt Groening, this is going to be a Futurama in the Middle Ages. No. They're trying for something different. I enjoyed it, but I can't disagree with what you said. I like the characters, especially Lucy. The jokes are either hit or miss, and there was one in the first episode that made me just laugh out loud. And again, it was a thinking one. They jump into the forest that they're trying to escape for, and it says, "Beware of racist elks."
Yes.
And then when they finally do it, got human elf together. Oh, that's not right. And oh my God, I just died. And the only reason I caught the sign is because I stopped and did what we usually do watching Futurama, freeze frame, so I could read the frickin' sign because it flies by so quick. But again, and this is something that I'm curious to see once you finish them, if you're going to, is this working for you the way the format is? It's not a yuck fest. It's almost like they're like, we're not doing Futurama. We're going to do episodic television where, yeah, what happens in this episode matters in this episode will matter in a future episode. And I don't think that's what people were ready for. It certainly wasn't what the trailer was given.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm on episode 5, and it reminds me a lot of the Cleveland show in a way. In that, okay, it's the same art style, it's very well produced, but I laughed a couple of times in the first episode, and I think a couple of times in the second, and the third, fourth, and fifth, I'm not laughing. Every so often I'll go, okay, that was funny.
I don't think you're supposed to.
But that's the problem. If the jokes are very much, lines, they may as well have arrows going, this is a joke. And if you're going to do that, they need to be funny jokes.
But it's not a funny show. I think they're aiming more for drama. And judging by the last 3 episodes, because even when I watch it with Chris, we stopped and we go, wow, that was not what I expected. Because by the time you get to the end, you're like, I couldn't even tell you a decent joke in the last 3 because it was kind of like, I don't know how many comedies you see where halfway through, okay, we're going to stop goofing around and now we're going to get to the serious part. And I'm wondering if that's maybe what they're going for. And, again, the trailer made me think, oh, this is going to be just kind of fun, sit back, enjoy. But I don't think it's that type of show. And I don't know, will it succeed? Well, we'll find out. They only got 20 episodes up.
Well, there are 10 episodes up now, and there'll be 10 more later. And maybe that's all they want to do, or, we don't know what the deals are.
To me, it very much reminds me of Bone. Because in the beginning, Bone was just the yuck fest. Great cow race. Everybody's dissing. Grandma's beating on phone bone. By the time you got to the end of it, there weren't many jokes left.
Right.
I think that's probably the closest analogy I can give. And I think, I don't know, when you finish, we'll have to revisit this because I'm curious to see if you buy it. But judging by the comments mostly that I've seen looking at the online reviews are either you hate it because it's not Futurama or you thought it was really interesting. Not funny, but just interesting. So, again, that's not the type of thing. If I have to explain this to you, it's failed.
Right.
Nevertheless, by the time you get to the end, you might change your mind and go, you know what? If they keep this going, it could work. There are 2 things, though, I got to tell you. How are you watching this?
I'm not watching it all in a row. I'm watching an episode here and an episode there.
What device are you? And again, that may fail.
Oh, I'm watching it on my TV.
Yeah, no. I'll get to what I'm getting at. But I think it's better binged because you notice the continuity. Are you watching it on a Roku? Are you watching it on a computer? How are you watching it?
I'm watching it my Roku onto the TV.
Okay, does your Roku cut out when the credits are and jump to the next episode?
Yeah, but you can also click so that it won't.
Do not allow yourself to do it on the last episode.
Okay.
And I didn't know that until I went online. There's another Easter egg I'll talk about when you're done because I've looked for it and couldn't find it because trying to pause on Roku sucks.
Yeah.
It's not like a VCR, and you'll probably see it when you get to the scene because you're probably going to go, oh, that needs to be freeze framed because it'll fly by quick. But those are the only two things I can tell you. Because, again, I had to go back, and I find that most annoying about Roku is that it wants to flip to the next episode or cut out the credits, and I'm like, I'm busy thumbing trying to get the proper.
That's a Netflix thing, though. Netflix does that on all devices.
Yeah, then it's Netflix, because I've only watched Netflix on Roku, and it's so damned annoying. There, I got another freaking out of it. Anyways.
Netflix also canceled 2 shows I enjoy.
Uh-oh.
The Joel McHale show starring Joel McHale. And the Michelle Wolf show. I forget the actual name of it, but it was Michelle Wolf's show. Both of those canceled. The Joel McHale show I liked because it was basically his old show, The Soup, where he made fun of reality TV and stuff like that. I liked it when it was every Sunday. I could sit down when I got home from work, and there we go, I'll watch that. Michelle Wolf's show was every Sunday as well. Watch that. Both of them are canceled. And I think part of it is that Netflix has a lot of trouble with shows that aren't binging. Because it's, this new episode drops on Sunday. And whenever they do shows like that, for some reason, they don't seem to last. I know Chelsea Handler had one that did that. But I'm sad those are gone. Remember when Chip Zdarsky...
Us Joes need all the work we can get.
Joel.
Oh, let's fire him then.
Yeah. Chip Zdarsky, who's been doing Spectacular Spider-Man. Remember how he's drawing the next issue? That's his last issue. That makes me sad. I really like his Spider-Man. And I think the issue where Peter Parker told J. Jonah Jameson that he was Spider-Man, one of the best stories that's been done on Spider-Man in a long time. I like the fact that he picked up the thread from the Mark Waid graphic novel of Spider-Man's, quote, sister, unquote. And I hope that's a character that stays around. I really like her. I like that he made the Tinkerer a really scary bad guy. And, I don't know who the new creative team is, but I will miss Chip Zdarsky. Joe, one of the things that DC does is they put out the big 80-page specials that are filled with short stories. The most recent one is the DC Beach Blanket Bad Guys Special. And most of them are really nice, they've got they're 80-page giants. They have about 6 to 10 stories in them. And normally I like them because it's okay. It's a quick one-shot, a nice little short story. New creators trying stuff out. I read this one, and the first story was terrible. And the rest of the stories were mediocre. And all I could think is, as I got about halfway through it, the editor really must not have given a shit about this. Because these stories were they were dull. They were all short stories about DC villains, and they were just dull. And especially that first story was a mess. It was hard to read. And where was the editor stepping in and going, okay, we need to fix this. We need to straighten the timeline out. We need to get some transitions in here. But it's almost like, it came in, they were like, it's over. People will buy it. Who cares? I'm not impressed. And it's kind of made it so when they do their next 80-page giant, I may want to take a look at it before I buy it rather than just buy it for, a nice sampler. And I like a good anthology. I know I'm, one of 3,000 people in the U.S. that does, but I like a good anthology. And the last geeking I had, there was a surprise comic that came out July 4th.
Surprise!
And I don't know if we talked about it or not. Robert Kirkman announced that on July 4th he was shipping a new comic. And I don't know if shops got to set their orders for it or not, but it was a surprise comic that wasn't announced till right before it came out. And it was called Die, Die, Die. And when I first heard about it, it's like, and again, we're not in the retail zone, so I don't know if you're going to get orders based on this other book you ordered or what. But I thought, for retailers, that's got to be a pain in the ass. But they've really got to think that they've got something here if they're going to pull this surprise and try something new. So I picked it up and I read it, and it's a mess. none of the characters are likable. The story's all over the place. The art is okay, but I defy anybody to tell me exactly what happened in the story because it's just so garbled. It's not well put together. It almost reads like it was thrown together over a weekend. And the first issue was so bad. There are some times when you read a first issue and it's like, I don't know exactly what's going on here, but I want more. Sandman's a good example. Doom Patrol by Grant Morrison's a good example. Thunderbolts was a good example. This was an issue where I don't know what's going on, and I really don't think I could possibly care less. Joe? Joe?
Yes.
What are you geeking on?
Sucktown, Alaska.
Is that where you stayed when I had to learn how to edit a podcast?
Actually, I guess I was in less sucky town, Alaska. Sucktown, Alaska is a novel by Craig Dirkes, Dirkes, who I guess is a local author, lives in town. And I picked this up at the aforementioned bookstore that closed way back in, I don't know, earlier this year. And I just picked it up because, it said Alaska. And basically it talks about how freshman year, Eddie Ashford had it all. Friends, parties, Taco Bell. He enjoyed, reveled in it, even flunked out of college, that is. Now he wants to redeem himself. He has to. He takes a job at a tiny Cusco, Alaska. He promises to stay there a year. His intentions are pure, but soon he's lonely, low on cash, and desperate to get the hell out of the tundra. It's rough, it's raw, it's harrowing, it's hilarious. Eddie's life becomes a dog sled ride along a line between youth and experience. Bravery and recklessness, right and wrong, stuff going, and Eddie is alone at the helm for the first time. First off, there is no Cusco, Alaska, so don't go looking for it. But second of all, it does remind me a little bit of living there. Although the towns I were in actually, well, first of all, when I was Dillingham, I was over there during the summer. And in Barrow was actually a little bit more civilized. It wasn't a place that had one grocery store, one gas pump, one this, one that. This is a pretty good book. I mean, I flipped through it surprisingly in one day. It's a coming of age written in first person, and I found it compelling. I found parts of me almost yelling at the main protagonist because of the dumbass decisions he's making. Despite everything, I see what's coming. Things went different, and it was an enjoyable ride, I guess. And as a bonus, I found out, I guess my book is autographed, which I didn't realize when I bought it. I just picked it up because the shop was going half price, and I figured for this particular novel, it was worth picking up. Again, Sucktown, Alaska by Dirkes. It's something I recommend. Just kind of a fun little slice of life book. We've talked about Disenchantment. I enjoyed it more when I came to the conclusion it's not going to be the funny yuck fest that Futurama was. And like I said, boy, there's a lot of people online who are like, it's not Futurama, it's not Futurama. And although I tend not to get in arguments, I'm like, well, duh, he's done Futurama. Maybe he wants to do something different. But God forbid we let him try. It's, what are they, 20-minute episodes?
Yeah.
So even if you binge them, you got 5.5 hours of your life done. Because they're not hour long. Speaking of half-hour shows and the power of promotion, we're talking a bit in the back. Minnesota State Fair is going on. The great Minnesota get-together that I usually go to when I can actually walk around it. Tonight, the Beach Boys are there. Woohoo!
Well,
but
it's Mike Love and a bunch of session musicians.
Yeah, well, just like my cousins with Atlantic Rhythm Section. If they want to call themselves that, they get to do it. Because everybody in the background is getting a piece of money. Just like when they called it Eric Idle Exploits Monty Python, you can be sure everybody got a piece of the action. Either way, when it started and the opening was last Thursday, actually I think it was Friday because that was the day I was homesick. They, all the local news guys are out there making goofs of themselves, showing the camera crowd what people are, they're either there trying to get away from the heat, in the case of today, getting away from the storms. But they had an interview with a group called a guy from a Tornado Hunter. This is a Netflix show, again, half-hour shows. A group of storm chasers out of I can't even say the word. Canada. Saskatoon? Saskatchewan? Saskatoon. Thank you.
Saskatoon is in the room.
Cory used to date a Canadian, so he knows all about it.
Pyongyang is in the room. I should just write up a list of cities Joe can't pronounce, and that will be the when I do concerts.
Chaska. Hello, St. Louis. Oh, we're in Springfield. Oh, yeah. Anyways, they interviewed the guy out there. They had the car they have. It's a Ford reinforced machine full of GoPros and things. And they basically, when they know there's going to be a storm, they take the 3,000 mile down to the storm, usually in Tornado Alley. And their goal is to get the money shot of the tornado, some decent time lapse, that they sell to CNN, Fox, whoever wants a close-up look of this. Consequently, there's tons of tornado hunters, people doing the same thing, so they're always looking for that one shot. They're constantly in a cash flow problem. There's life gets in the way. Like one of the biggest tornado outbreaks in the world, half the guys were up home getting fitted for tux, so the one guy can get married. The point being is the guy was being interviewed by the local meteorologists. They talked about the show they're doing. They showed the truck. They said, come on out and see us, which, of course, I couldn't. I would have loved to. And then, of course, the Netflix series. And I'm like, well, they've been doing this a long time, but this is the first time they'd had a Netflix series. Quick half-hour episodes. And I've actually enjoyed the heck out of it because I'm real big on the tornado chasing and all that stuff. Much as I'd like to do it, one of the biggest problem is you may never see one. So you're going to spend a couple $1,000 to go see a tornado, and you might never get it. And that's, of course, one of the themes these guys do it. So a couple of shows to check out. And unlike most Netflix shows, they're half-hour shows. Tornado Hunters are anywhere from 18 to 25 minutes, depending on the show they put together. So I haven't read any comics. I haven't, because I was busy reading the book I was talking about. Other than the two shows, I just haven't had a lot of time between being sick and trying to get back on the horse. It's just, boy, when you're sick.
You got a horse?
I did, and they kept walking away. I said, get back here. I got to get to work. And he looked at me and went, That's a disenchantment joke, by the way. Cory, what are you geeking on?
The first volume of Final Fantasy Ultimania Archive is out. It covers the first bunch of Final Fantasy games. I don't talk about it a lot on this here podcast. I am a huge Final Fantasy fanboy. I did not even do console gaming for a while. My gaming was mostly first-person shooters on computer until 1999, when the woman I was dating told me, you have to play Final Fantasy VII. We cannot be friends. We cannot be together if you don't play Final Fantasy VII. So I picked up a PlayStation, and there was a used video game store that was going out of business. Boy, I think I've told the story about how I only had 2 presents for my son for Christmas that year, and he was so disappointed going into Christmas until he opened them, and it was like 2 big stacks of PlayStation games. But I played Final Fantasy VII, fell in love with the game. I've played all the Final Fantasies since. It's the only game series where I go, yeah, I have to play it. And the Final Fantasy Ultimania Archive is all the behind-the-scenes stuff, the production art, a lot of Yokotasha Amano, I'm probably mispronouncing the first name, Amano art. Just a beautiful, beautiful book. Nice big $40 coffee table book filled with cool stuff. By the time this podcast drops, a historic wrestling card will have taken place. Joe, have you heard about All In?
No.
There's the group, the Bullet Club, one of which, Kenny Omega the Cleaner, but also the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes, although he's just Cody now, and others who are in both Ring of Honor and New Japan, said a few months ago they felt they were popular enough that they could sell out a 10,000-seat arena in Chicago. Now, since WCW went under, no one has filled an arena that big in the U.S. except WWE. TNA Impact never filled one. Ring of Honor usually runs in places that have 1 to 2,000 seats. When they're here in the Twin Cities, they play at the Eisenhower Center in Hopkins, which I think is 1,000 people, and most it's bleachers. TNA never did it. Even when New Japan comes here, they play in 5 to 6,000 seat arenas. This is the biggest arena for an indie show, especially an indie show that at the time did not have a company behind it. It sold out immediately. Leading up to it, they are having StarCast, where they're having basically a wrestling convention with tons of panels that feature wrestling podcasts, retailers. Basically, there's a wrestling convention, and then Saturday night is the show All In. Now, if you want a good taste of what All In was, yeah, it's already over. But WGN America showed the first hour of the show on WGN America Saturday night. So I'm very excited about this pay-per-view. The other thing that happened in relation to this, Ring of Honor over WrestleMania weekend booked Madison Square Garden. This is the first non-WWFE event in Madison Square Garden for decades. And WrestleMania is in New York. For some reason, WWE didn't use Madison Square Garden. So Ring of Honor and New Japan booked it. Again, they sold out in a half hour. This is big news in the wrestling world. This is kind of sending shockwaves to, hey, Ring of Honor and New Japan, and especially the Young Bucks and the other members of the Bullet Club, have a huge fan base. They're not going to be challenging WWE anytime soon, but they are really popular, and they're going to get some big money when their contracts are up. I'm very excited about that show. It's Saturday night, and I have to work Saturday night, so I'll probably watch it Sunday morning when I get home. Comic-wise, I read the Spider-Man annual, which is a Miles Morales annual, and it's the first Miles Morales story not done by Brian Michael Bendis, and I liked it. I thought it was very well done. I'll be interested to see what they do with Miles Morales when they start the new series, and I really, really, really hope they don't go with the name that they've been toying with, which is Spy D. Yeah, he'll work for S.H.I.E.L.D. He'll be a spy. Spy D. No, just don't do it. Don't do it. And then the last thing I am geeking on.
I am watching. That would be a good spy name.
Yeah, but a really bad superhero name.
True.
And the last thing I'm geeking on, they have announced the Conan creative team, which proves that once again, we were right all along.
Yay, nobody believes us.
Back in April, when they announced that Marvel was getting Conan back, Joe, who did I say should be writing it?
Studebaker Hawk.
Who's Studebaker Hawk?
He's a superhero from Frank Zappa.
No, that's not who I said.
Oh, well, and I wasn't listening.
I said it should be Jason Aaron.
Oh, that's right, you did.
Marvel has announced Jason Aaron will be writing Conan. The artist is someone I'm unfamiliar with, but they showed some of his art, and it's beautiful. The first 12 issues are going to be an interconnected story that kind of goes through all of Conan's life, and that's just for the main Conan book. We haven't heard of, because I heard a rumor they were going to be doing 3 Conan books. So
Conan, Kid Conan, and Baby Conan.
Well, they could do more stories of Conan when he was a young thief. Conan the King, King Conan. There's always good stuff there.
Him going around and around pushing that big ass thing underground, you know.
That was just in the movie.
All right, but they could.
You go ahead and ask Marvel for that.
Marvel doesn't listen to anything we ask.
I don't know. They're giving us Jason Aaron on Conan. Got you there, didn't I?
No, I went back and listened to it.
And?
That's all I said. I went back and listened to it.
But the Conan creative team got me very excited. We got the Conan Omnibus. We got the Savage Sword Omnibus. Marvel's going to be getting a lot of my money for Conan. Well, believe it or not, kids, you have listened to us blather on about funny books for over an hour and a half.
Damn straight.
And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the Cleveland Show. Joe?
I issue this challenge to the viewers. The very first thing you see in animation on Disenchantment gives a big clue as to what the nature of this universe is. There's lots of secret clues and puzzles and even treasures. No monetary value, but they're in there. Matt Groening talking about Disenchantment. Hit my music.